welcome to another CrossTalk as we are joined by State Senator Mike Brady. This is his special program that we do on a regular basis as it represents the 2nd Plymouth and Bristol District. Welcome back to CrossTalk.
Thank you, Kevin, for inviting me back.
How's life treating you?
Pretty good. We've been busy with dealing with the budget and a bunch of other pieces of legislation. This year, I'm currently the chairman of the Public Service Committee, and I'm also the vice chairman of the Tourism Committee, and I've been appointed to the Ordinance Committee. And a lot of busy pieces of legislation. As you know, there's thousands and thousands of bills that get filed. Not everyone sees the light of day. Some get refiled and so forth. But we base filing bills on some of our own ideas, some of our constituents' ideas, and there's home rule petitions that are specific to certain towns and communities we represent that bills are filed.
So we know right now it's that time of year where the budget has moved along right now. We got the conference committee, we got members of the House and the Senate, got 3 on each side, I believe.
That's correct.
And they're hammering out a deal for the governor to take a look at. Give me a thought as to when we get to this part in the process for the fiscal 20 budget.
Right. We always hope to get the budget done by the start of July 1st. That's when our fiscal year ends. What we had to do this past month, because they expected it to go beyond July 1st, which happened last year, it happens sometimes. There's several other states in the same boat. If there's differences, and I'll explain, the budget is presented by the governor. He presents it to the State House of Representatives. They have their own proposals and own amendments, and then it goes to the State Senate. If there's differences between the Senate and the House, which there always is, it goes to what's called the Conference Committee. As you mentioned, there's 3 members. There's the Ways and Means chair from each branch, a Democrat and Republican on each branch. So they're working out the differences to come to a consensus, and we usually get it done. So what we had to do this month prior to July, we did a 1-month budget to keep government moving and to keep the funding to our communities, which is so important.
Yeah, one of the items in the budget that I know that folks here locally were concerned with was educational funding and where things stand with that. What are your thoughts and concerns in regards to making sure that there is enough funding when it comes to Chapter 70 funding? And I know in a moment we're going to talk a little bit about the foundation budget and I guess a commission that's actually discussing that. But talk to me about ed funding and the push, hopefully, to get more in the fiscal 20 budget.
Yeah, education funding, which you mentioned was a Chapter 70 funding, is so important to communities. Some communities have K through 12 full-day kindergarten. Some communities only have part-time kindergarten. They can't afford to make ends meet. Some of them, I represent towns from northeastern through the city of Brockton, through Whitman, all the way to Hanover down to Plimpton. Each community is in serious need of education funding. We increase education funding, highest increases in the history of the Commonwealth, which is great news. For my district alone, we increased it over $4,700,000. Now, obviously, Brockton is the largest portion of that. They get the most funding. It's based on population, based on some demographics and so forth. But also, towns like Whitman, I met with the Whitman officials, and I appreciate all the work. We've met with them with fellow colleagues, Rep. Josh Cutler and Representative Sullivan. The Whitman-Hanson School District has combined, so it also encompasses the town of Hanson. So Rep. Cutler represents Hanson, Rep. Sullivan represents Whitman, and I represent both communities. So we did increase funding, but they still need more funding. And there was a lot of amendments proposed. Some were supported, some were not. There was one amendment to increase $100 spending per student, but meeting with the experts at the state level, they felt that it would help the wealthier communities such as Newton and Wellesley and wouldn't help the communities such as Whitman and Hanson and Brockton as much as we need to do. So as you mentioned, the Foundation Review Commission has made some recommendations, and they continue to meet to hopefully get some more funding, and they have guaranteed that there will be more funding coming. That's an important endeavor. And a lot of people, when they're choosing where to live, where to buy a home in their community, they want to look at the school system. And, my sister raised a family in Whitman. All my nieces and nephews are long grown and living all over the country now. But, I've met with the officials. I give a lot of credit to our school committee and our elected officials in the Whitman-Hanson region because they are doing a great job advocating on the budget. And we've been in communication how important this funding is.
Yeah, it's interesting. You just mentioned the Foundation Budget Review Commission. What exactly is it that they're looking at? What do you know the items that they're looking at and what they would look to do to help those communities that aren't necessarily getting enough funding, but not necessarily giving money to communities that don't need that much.
Right. We have to be fair to every community. You've got, as I mentioned, some very wealthy communities like Newton and Wellesley, and then you've got poorer communities like Brockton and New Bedford. Whitman and Hanson isn't a community that we have a lot of millionaires living in there, but it's doing a little better as far as income levels go. But still, they need funding. And this Foundation Review Commission has met. They made recommendations, and this goes back even further. Before 1993, the wealthier communities were reaping the rewards because they also get funding from their local tax base. So if you've got businesses in the community that are contributing into the tax base, and then if you've got wealthier people with multi-million-dollar homes, they're going to have a higher tax base to put revenue into their local communities than a poorer community would. So the Ed Reform Act was voted and implemented in 1993 to help out the less fortunate communities. Like the city of Brockton, and in every community for that matter, Whitman, Hanson, Halifax, they cannot deny a child an education, whether they're disabled, whether the demographics they come from, et cetera. So if there's not enough funding for these communities and the wealthy communities are reaping the rewards, it hurts these less fortunate communities. So the Ed Reform Act was put in place. It wasn't perfect. A lot of money did go to cities like Brockton and so forth, but then the towns felt like they weren't getting their fair share of money. So since then, there's been other changes with how the foundation budget is formulated, how it's funded, but still these towns are not getting their fair share, and this is why this review commission has been designed. Then you come up with the MCAS and the PAC testing, and it seems like these teachers are forced to teach the test. You know, we even passed a bill about history and so forth, and about
Civics.
Civics, yes, thank you. And you know, because when we were kids, you used to watch the cartoons and how a bill is filed and everything else.
I'm just a bill.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they got away from that. And you ask a kid, some kids don't even know who their local officials are. And we got to do a better job as elected officials getting that word out. But you want people to vote, and it's so important to get more people involved and get more people involved in that community and civics. So we passed a law to teach civics in the classroom. But you need money for that because nothing is for free, as we know. So this Foundation Formula Commission has been designed. They're going to be making recommendations to implement more money. Again, we have to get the revenue into the Commonwealth. Like you and I, we have to balance our own pocketbooks like every consumer out there. Unlike the federal government, we cannot deficit spend. So we balance the budget every year, but we do need more funding. So some of those ideas to bring new funding is. One thing is revenue's been up. The economy's been doing good. Revenue was at some of its highest levels in years. Last December, it wasn't there. We had a little bit of deficit. One reason was at the federal tax laws, capital gains laws have changed. People used to file their capital gains taxes at the end of December, figuring they're going to get tax breaks coming when they file in April. The federal laws have changed, so a lot of people do not file their capital gains. They file it by April, and now revenue's been up. People are doing good. The unemployment rate is the lowest it's been in years. That's good news. The other side of the coin is we still need more revenue. We put a little bit more money into the rainy day fund. That was a savings account that was put in forth because, again, like you and I, we always have to have that savings account. Should things get tough, you got to pay your bills. We have to pay our bills on the state level like everybody else. So we formed that. We increased funding for that. Plus, it affects our bond rating with Wall Street. Like everything, if our bond rating is doing well with Wall Street, that gives us better borrowing power and better interest rates, et cetera. So all of that comes into effect. Now, moving forward, what other means are we looking to bring revenue into the state? The gaming legislation is one. The law that was passed, it approves up to 3 casinos. Doesn't mean they have to approve 3 casinos, but they can license up to 3 in one slot power. So we have the Springfield casino that's open. I went out to visit that a couple months ago. We did a Commonwealth Conversation tours with legislators. I will tell you, they have brought in, they're expected to bring in over $25 million to the city of Springfield alone, never mind money to the Commonwealth, which is huge. The jobs they created, good union paying jobs, whether it be restaurant workers, whether it be people working in the casino, whatever. Then construction jobs to build the casino. And there was a fear of, well, does a casino bring the unwanted characters? Is it going to increase crime? Is it going to bring unwanted? I will tell you, the neighborhood around the perimeter of this casino, some of the shadiest places that you would see probably a year or two ago have cleaned up. They've invested into infrastructure. Some liquor establishments, you knew that potential illegal activity was going in the back of the building unlawfully. The police have told us, the local officials have told us, they've cleaned up all of that area and invested in their businesses. So now you got new restaurants opening up, et cetera. Then there was a concern, well, if a casino is going to offer a discount, a free lunch or whatever, is that going to affect the local business down the street? Well, we went to an Italian restaurant a couple blocks away. He's got a deli and a store, and he provided lunch that day. We were there. Unbelievable food. And he said, Mike, it hasn't affected me either way. I had a goal of my business to start. I'm doing well. It hasn't affected me in a negative way or a positive way. But the close proximity to the casino has helped. So the gaming legislation is one. They're also looking at Airbnbs, which we passed legislation on that. Again, not to hurt the mom and pop that might rent their cottage down the Cape for a week, but these people that are, whether they're in Boston, they rent to, nurses that might be working in Mass General for 3 months out of the year, they need a place to stay, they may stay at an Airbnb, or people that are renting out their facilities for lengthy times, we are getting more tax revenue from that through the Airbnbs law that passed, a bed and breakfast. Another thing that's on the table is the fantasy sports and DraftKings. People right now are betting online. We're not getting the proper revenue from that. It's licensed in other states, so we are going to be licensing that in Massachusetts. I wish we did it sooner than later. I'm an old man. I don't know how to do this technology like the young kids do, but all the young kids are doing this online, whether they're betting on the sports games or whatever it is. We've got to take advantage of that. The revenue is going out of state. New York did it several years ago. All the states around us are doing. I think we're behind the 8 ball to do this. We got to get moving. I know there's a commission formed on this to get that moving forward, but that's another source of revenue that the money is leaving the state. We should retain it in Massachusetts.
So I got to digress back to the Foundation Budget Review Commission. And one of the things that I've heard during this past budget cycle, especially on the local level when communities are deciding their annual budgets, whether it's through a council vote or whether it's through a town meeting, is unfunded mandates. And I don't know where that is in the realm of things, but I know here locally in the Whitman-Hanson district, new school superintendent, one of the things he says that hindered him as he was putting the budget together was unfunded mandates. What is the state legislature doing when it comes to mandates that are imposed upon communities, especially when it comes to education, where they're expected to do something, but yet they're not getting the funding to be able to achieve that? They have to kind of fund this on their own. Have you heard anything from folks on that? And
Yes.
Is there any conversation in that area?
Yes, there is, and I have spoken to local, whether it be local selectmen, local school committee members,
Sure.
superintendents. It is a problem that we have to address. They are not getting reimbursed at 100% like they were supposed to be. We did pass some parts of the budget to reimburse school districts at 100%, but like regional school transportation, they have to provide transportation for these students. They have to get them to and from. And some kids that may have lived in a community, they have moved, they're still going to the school district or they live too far away. They have to provide transportation. In the regional schools, now you have the Whitman-Hanson Regional School, which is a regular public school system, but then you have these regional schools like Silver Lake, South Shore Regional School, Southeastern Regional School. Yep. They take in kids from all over the district, and they're not getting funded at the full 100% rate. We have increased funding to the highest levels on that in the budget right now, but this is a big issue that has to be addressed, and they have talked about this in the Foundation Review Commission to get that moving. And again, we have to balance our budget. We can't overspend. We can't deficit spend, but there is money out there now, and through these initiatives that I mentioned, hopefully the Commonwealth will be getting new money in, and it's very important that we reimburse these communities for those unfunded mandates, as you mentioned. Again, you still got to be leery. The economy's been doing good. Real estate values have gone higher than they ever had, but as you know, we look at past history, it usually goes in 10 to 15-year cycles, and I worry about when that next downturn is happening. There's a lot of things at the federal level with tariffs on other countries. It's great. I believe in manufacturing products in the United States and in Massachusetts, because we've lost too many products to other countries overseas because they have less labor costs. They don't have the same regulations we do. But when you put tariffs, like our farming industry in the Midwest of the country is hurting, and we get products from them to deliver to Massachusetts. So there's a catch-22. Some of these tariffs may work, but you got to be careful because we want to keep the cost of goods and products down. Of course, we want to support local business like W.B. Mason in Brockton. Their home headquarters in Brockton. No one even knows that. They're doing fantastic. They've expanded all over the country. It's funny, the year the Red Sox went to the World Series, their first year in many, many years, They did an ad in the beginning of the year, not even expecting the Red Sox were going to go to the World Series. They got in at a better rate, and then when they went to the World Series, now they got offices in New York, New Jersey. They're worldwide known, which is great. But, you know, the days of our yesteryear, the old shoe industry is gone. Whitman had a lot of shoe factories. Brockton had a lot of shoe factories. We had a lot of manufacturing. We've got to come up with new initiatives. And, you know, moving forward, energy is a big thing, too, trying to keep energy costs down. The Commonwealth is moving forward with clean, renewable energy and trying to get away from these fossil fuels. So we're going forward with solar and wind, even recycling food products. This is a whole industry that's wide open. Instead of your food waste going to a company that takes the trash and, you know, buries it in some landfill somewhere, we can recycle these food products. It's compost, it's healthy, and you can produce energy. And we had a chance to get a company in, and I've met with some officials at the state level to meet with local officials in the South Shore to try to bring some of that business to the South Shore, because that's a win-win. They'll pay taxes, they'll bring revenue, and you know, it costs money. When you send your waste basket out on the sidewalk and these companies are picking up, you know, the rates of your rubbish pickup goes up, your recycling, it's killing some people. And if we can utilize that waste and recycle it and bring energy, and it helps our environment out. You know, they talk about global warming. Some people believe it, some people don't, but it's been real. Our solar caps are melting. There's a major issue in the waste, and plus, it offsets the cost of these fossil fuels that we depend on other countries, like in the Middle East, for these fossil fuels that, you know, when they formed OPEC back in the 70s, they kind of had too much control. And we remember our gas prices went through the roof in those days.
It's funny you mention the composting, because it gives me an opportunity to do a little bit of a segue. We last year, we did there was a video that was done because there was grant funding that was given for composting. There were these bins. Led by one of our producers, Marianne Damasio, was part of the video that we did, as well as an individual who is the chairman of the Hanson Board of Health, and she is also the chair of the Whitman-Hanson Community Access, our board of directors. And she was actually part of an event that took place this month, and I know you and I wanted to talk about it real quick. One of a number of unsung heroines here in the Commonwealth, Arlene Diaz. You want to talk a little bit about this event that was held up at the State House?
Yeah, these are all individuals that kind of not out in the forefront, not in the media every day. They're the unsung heroines. And they do so many good things for their communities that the average consumer doesn't maybe know about. Now, we know Arlene, and we've had people from Brockton. I know Jill Wiley, who's a reverend. Alan Pesovich got recognized, Judy Gorman. And there was other people from the district. I know all our colleagues, Representative Cutler recommended somebody, Representative Sullivan did.
Right, and Representative Cutler did. Arlene was one of those that Representative Cutler had recommended. And if I don't do this justice, I know she also is the health agent for the town of Hanson, and also a cancer survivor. So and I don't have her bio in front of me. It's just some of the things that I've committed to memory here. But I just wanted to continue on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Emily Keene from East Bridgeway. I know Rep. Sullivan recommended her. And there's so many unsung heroines out there that are behind the scenes. And it's great that we recognize them at the State House. We even did a tour with some of their friends at the State House, and some have been into the State House, always advocating on what their initiatives are for their communities, but some have never had the chance to get in the State House. And again, you know, one person, Judy Gorman, she's always been behind the scene of her husband. Dave runs kids' road races up at D.W. Fields Park in Brockton. He does a lot of great initiatives, raising money for the Helping Hands Fund to help less fortunate families. But Judy is one of those people that never got recognized. She was always the woman behind the husband, and the cliche behind every good man is a good woman, or vice versa. But like Arlene has done so much work in the community in Hanson, and it's great that she is recognized. And I see her at a lot of events that I attend in Hanson, whether it be cookouts or even at Joe Sullivan's house when he's doing his yard sale and having his baked beans and so forth, or at some of the other events in the community.
You know, she's a key community leader and a valuable asset to the community and the South Shore.
Yeah. And she's also so humble, and this is the people that need a little recognition, because one of these people that isn't out there bragging about what they do at all. They're so humble and reserved.
Do
it
quietly. That is Arlene in a nutshell. Another bill that I want to make sure that we mention prior to talking to things that you've been attending or doing here in the district, and that is the hands-free bill. I know that there's something in regards to generally if you are texting, that there is a provision on the books. If you could kind of give us what this new bill, if and when it passes, what it will mean, because there's too many times where I am traveling around the South Shore and see people who are more locked into their phones. It's like they're having a conversation, they're sitting at a light, and
Right.
you go by them and they're carrying on a conversation and doing stuff on their phone and not giving their full attention to what's happening in front of them behind, a 6,000 or 7,000 ton vehicle. What is this bill? What will it do once it is passed into law and signed by the governor?
Well, this is such an important public safety bill, and as you mentioned, we, whether we're going to Boston riding on the highways in our local communities, you're constantly people looking down on their cell phones, not looking to where they're driving, and they start swerving, they don't pay attention where they're going, and it's a very dangerous situation. We've seen many accidents because of that. The initial bill that got passed a little while back was for the younger people not to either use their cell phone, period, or not to text. And then that bill included elimination of texting at all. But people are still doing it.
Yeah.
So in the cell phone use, even if you're talking on the phone, now a lot of cars, now I had an old Blazer that wouldn't be probably contoured to this because you couldn't put a Bluetooth in it though.
Didn't have the technology.
Exactly. I bought another vehicle that has Bluetooth in it, a smaller vehicle, more economical too, that will have the technology, and I got to get educated by some of the young people how to use Bluetooth. But that being said, you constantly see people, no matter where you go, constantly driving the wrong direction or swerving, constantly doing the wrong thing. And many accidents or near accidents have happened. So it's a big public safety initiative. I've had overwhelming support from my constituency all over the district. I think it's long overdue we do it. It has passed the House and it passed the Senate. It's now currently in a conference committee, and I'm confident that they will get that out before the end of the fiscal year and get it done, because this is an important public safety bill, and it's long overdue. And it's the world we live in. When you and I grew up, one of your parents might have had a car. My mother never drove. Now there's so many cars in the household. Both the husband and wife are driving, the kids are driving. There's more cars on the road. And you mentioned these big tractor trailers. You've seen constantly accidents, and I know we're going to mention later the poor motorcyclists that got killed. We send our condolences, and we'll talk about it later. But there was so many traffic and high tractor trailers, heavy equipment on the road, never mind other things. You've got to take care of public safety, and this is such an important bill. And as I mentioned, there's overwhelming support, and I think it's long overdue.
Well, we can actually, if you want, segue into what you're referencing, and that is the horrific accident that happened up in New Hampshire, where 7 motorcyclists were killed. I think there were others that were also injured by an individual who was driving a vehicle that had a trailer on it, and the trailer went into these individuals. There was an event that was held here in Whitman to remember them, and if I'm correct, the Jarheads Motorcycle Club. You attended that event, did you not?
Yeah, and I know Rep. Sullivan, who's a rep from the district, she was there earlier in the afternoon. I got there a little later. They had a vigil at night, a candlelight vigil. I know a lot of people that ride motorcycles. My brother rides with the Blue Knights. I used to have a lot of friends back in the day. I owned a motorcycle when I was younger. I don't have one now, but a lot of our friends that ride police organizations, whatever, prior to even the vigil, about a month or so ago, I was at a motorcycle safety initiative at the Whitman VFW, and it mentioned about checking twice. We had signs. I have one on my lawn at home. I gave some other, because you've got to be aware of what's around you when you're riding. And unfortunately, this is a terrible tragedy that happened. And I offer my condolences to the families and all the members of the Jarheads and all motorcyclists out there. This should have never happened. I know there's a lot of investigation going on why this happened, but we did have a vigil for the families of the 7 people that have passed, but there was a lot of other motorcyclists that got injured, and I spoke with the group that night. They had me speak. I ran into a lot of friends that were involved with this, and they're from all over. They're not just from Whitman. They may be from Pembroke, or they may be from East Bridgewater, they may be from Lakeville, but it's such an unnecessary tragedy. And we had probably over 1,000 motorcyclists there and other people from the community. It was a great turnout. I know there's a fundraiser, a GoFundMe fund. I was able to donate. We're reaching out to more people to donate. But this is a serious issue. It's still being investigated. But as far as, it's an unnecessary tragedy. And my heart goes out to the families. And matter of fact, there's a family, a woman who works for a real estate office in Brockton, that
That's right.
she's part of the group who organized
Yeah, I was
this.
speaking with Bernie Hassan about that.
Yeah,
That's correct.
and it's
But there's individuals who are, like I said, were injured
yes.
in this as well. We're
Yes.
talking about the folks who are no longer with us. There's more than just those 7. That there were others who were injured, who were suffering from their injuries from it too.
And I believe as we talked, they're having a memorial ceremony for the police officer from Whitman.
Yep, from Plymouth.
Plymouth, I'm sorry, who passed. And, it just breaks your heart. And it should have never happened, obviously. But we're going to do whatever we can. I mentioned that we have a moment of silence at the State Senate, one of the meetings coming up. But we have to stay on top of this and whatever we can do for the families. And I'm going to give out my number in the office too, 617-722-1200. Any help we can be. I also spoke to some of my colleagues in the Senate. I know Senator Vinny DiMacedo, who represents Plymouth, he reached out to some of the members too, because some of the members live in his community. And it's not just the jarheads who meet in this. This is a VFW hall. A lot of veterans who ride motorcycles. Correct. There's a lot of other organizations that ride motorcycles that were there. And it was a great turnout. And I know we had the bagpipes, and there was some prayer words mentioned there as well that night. And I know they're going to have other events. So again, any mention we can help out, please let us know.
Senator, we just got like 2 minutes left. I want to thank you very much for coming in and having a great conversation here this afternoon. Anything you want to say quickly in closing to the folks who are watching this program and will be watching future programs?
Well, anybody can always call my office, as I mentioned, at 617-722-1200. And my email at the State House is michael.brady@masenate.gov. And we're always listening to ideas from our constituents. Nobody does it alone. We have a great group in Massachusetts. We work well across party lines with Republicans and Democrats, unlike the horror stories we hear out of Washington. And you have to work together to get things done. And we are moving Massachusetts forward. I think we've got a lot of great initiatives. Even the Silver Lake Water District, we had gotten funding last year in the budget. We were able to get more funding this year, but it's in the conference committee to clean up the chronic bacteria and address those issues. And as was mentioned, school funding is a big priority, and also our senior centers, the Council on Aging. As I know, Halifax, they're looking to expand. They need to make it fully handicap accessible. I was able to get some money in the budget for that, but there's other senior centers across the district that need funding. And any help we can be, please don't hesitate to contact me.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And, that's all the time that we have here on CrossTalk with State Senator Mike Brady. We thank you for tuning into this program. And if there's anything that you'd like to see on WHCA, you have any questions in regards to our programming or our guest, info@whca.tv. And until next time, have a good day.